bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The Cynic Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cynic Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cynic.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Agree?
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
This is the greatest show of all time.
And this is episode 174 of the Cynic Radio Podcast, and I'm your scruffy-looking nerf herder of a co-host, Cynic. And joining me, as always, two dudes who never take their helmets off, Igri and Ryan. And on this week's show, we're going to do a little catch-up with the CRP gang and talk about their latest adventures. And we're also going to break down episode 2 of The Mandalorian, The Mines of Mandalore, and episode 3, The Convert. We got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Ryan, I like to check up on you guys and see what you're up to because you're always up to some shenanigans. So let's talk about it. I mean, you had another adventure with Kevin Smith.
Yes, so we went to the same theater that you and I went to see the George R. R. Martin talk, and he was it's a live episode. So one of my favorite podcasts is his Fat Man Beyond podcast, and he and his co-host Mark Bernardin. I love Mark Bernardin's takes, and he's a great writer. He's done comics, TV. So for me, it was cool because it's somebody who I've listened to a lot, and I feel like I've actually learned a lot about writing from. And so to be able to kind of say hi, shake his hand, get a picture was really cool for me. And then Kevin Smith, who's ever the salesman, even though he's quit weed, he was selling a bunch of stuff, among which was an autographed plastic container of something, which I was able to buy. So I can now say that I bought a substance off of Kevin Smith. So that was kind of cool.
Silent Bob for the win.
Yeah.
He's not so silent when there's things to sell, though. If Jay's not there as the mouthpiece, he's in full salesman mode.
He was selling a bunch of stuff at that show, which is cool. I got some stuff from Kevin Smith, so that's cool.
That sounds fantastic. How about you, IG? Any more you spend more time in Florida than Ron DeSantis? What's going on in the House of Mouse?
Well, it was great. I took a long awaited family vacation, my first actual trip to Disney itself, right? Obviously, I talked about I went to the Galactic Star Cruiser in January, but now we took the whole family and we went and did the whole Disney parks thing, but good timing because now the Mandalorian has started showing up in Hollywood studios. So I couldn't quite get him to stop to take a selfie and everything because he was mobbed by 1,000 people just getting around him. But I got close enough to take a couple of pictures of him, and he has Grogu with him. That was cool. But yeah, we spent a week down there and went to all the parks and had a lot of fun. Went on some rides. The Guardians of the Galaxy's ride is insane. The Avatar part of the Animal Kingdom is really cool, and you get to ride on a banshee and you ride under waterfalls. You get water sprayed on your face. It's kind of cool. A lot of good stuff there, and I mean, Disney knows how to do the magic. It's expensive as all get out. I can't imagine spending that kind of money on anything short of a car or a house ever again. But I'm glad I did it, and the family had a great time, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, a few short years ago, life kind of stopped as we knew it. As the pandemic rolled in, live music stopped. I was able to go to one show late in the year, but then after that, all concerts were canceled. So as we've started to get back to real life and everything's going back to normal, I've started to kind of venture out and go to a few concerts. And it's been no less than 20 years since I've been to Madison Square Garden to see a show. And probably 25 years since I've seen the band Muse, who was opening up for The Cure, and I actually had to leave early because they started the headliner in the middle of their set, which I have no idea why they did that. They put them on a secondary stage. But, I mean, nonetheless, on that evening, that band caught my attention, and I've been a fan ever since. And they are on a world tour now called the Will of the People Tour, and they have Evanescence opening up for them, and it was fantastic. My last experience at Madison Square Garden wasn't great. It was before the renovations. The seating was bad. Almost unless you're in the bottom tier, every seat was bad. You couldn't see the stage. You couldn't really get a good line of sight or anything. And it's all changed up. So the flack I've given Madison Square Garden over the years, I can kind of withdraw that now. It's actually a pretty good venue to see a show. It was easily accessible despite the large-scale construction going on. And for my money, Muse is one of the best live acts out there. They have a great theme throughout the show, the light show, everything worked well, and it feels like they're writing their albums to kind of all congeal together. So Muse is definitely worth headed out to see. So I was happy about that. We've got a couple other things lined up, but I'll tell you, the prices for live shows for tickets has gotten crazy. I mean, that alone, mediocre seat, you're looking at a little bit over $200, and that was a deal. We need to do something about, just recently, Robert Smith of The Cure, that I mentioned earlier, started protesting against Ticketmaster for their just absorbent fees and charges, and he got them to withdraw some of them, and actually got some of the StubHub locations to take down some of the states. But I believe New York and several other states have laws protecting businesses like StubHub. So legalization is now not only protected by the law, but the scalping is now legal. It's incredible that if you put money behind anything can become legal these days. So that's the only problem is I love going to concerts despite the hell that it's played on my hearing, but geez, you're really paying out of pocket to get to see anybody these days unless you see them at the beginning of their careers and in a small venue. So get out there, experience life. COVID's over. I mean, you don't need to wear a mask, and enjoy yourself. So Ryan, you got some questions about episode 2 of The Mandalorian, so let's do it.
Yeah, sure. So episode 2, titled The Mines of Mandalore. So it starts with a pit stop on Tatooine where Din tries and fails to get a part for IG-11, but he ends up with his own R5-D2, who's clearly not as courageous as R2. So Grogu force jumps into Peli's arms and says some kind of gibberish. So Cynic, if you're a betting man, what will Grogu's first words be?
That is a good question. I think his first words are going to be, may the Force be with you.
Interesting.
Only because I'm sure Luke berated him with that after everything he did.
Yeah. Well, so suppose he was there 2 years. Egg, what do you think? Any thoughts on what his first words will be?
Well, I mean, the fun thing would be give me a frog, I guess. But I'm thinking, he is so really enthralled with Din that I think maybe it'll be this is the way. I think that just, if I was a betting man, that would be where my bet would be, is that he's going to lean into the Mandalorian mythos, and this is the way is going to be where he goes.
Yeah. I think it's going to be Din if we had to throw money down on it.
Dada Din or something like that. All right. So speaking of, Din makes it to Mandalore safely, and along the way, it appears like he's training Grogu. So he's kind of teaching him how to navigate. Do you guys think that Grogu is officially going to become a Mandalorian at some point by the end of the season or series?
No, I can't see them putting him in a helmet. I absolutely can't. I mean, unless it's by name only, but I think he will continue to develop his Force skills and they'll be sort of like a bounty hunter Jedi team, which is kind of awesome if you think about it.
What do you think, Egg? Do you think that he becomes a Mandalorian?
I think that maybe the way that people are Mandalorians maybe changes because of Grogu, because I think he may get a helmet, but I don't think he's going to be a wear a helmet all the time thing, because I think, well, one, merchandising alone, like now you can sell Grogu's with helmets. That's a lot of money Disney can make. And then two, just like having a set of armor made for somebody that's not obviously humanoid, like at least tall humanoid, would be kind of a cool thing to see. So I think that they may make a set of armor and stuff for him and let him do some of the things, but I'm not sure they're going to I think it's going to change some stuff so that like he can take his helmet off and do his things and not be forsaken, as it were.
Well, it's like and this goes back to me, something I've said. This is not a fully original thought. Many people have said this, but that from the beginning, especially once we learned of, Baby Yoda at the time, or the child, now Grogu, I thought that the Mandalorian was going to be kind of a split where it would be actually referring to him and not to Din Djarin. So I think he has to become a Mandalorian by the end of the series, especially since he's decided not to be a Jedi. And I think that Din training him makes sense. I do think that at some point, Din kind of basically decides he doesn't have to always wear the mask. So I think there has to be a change there, because you're right. Like, there's no world where Grogu puts on a helmet and never takes it off again. So I think something has to change in order to make that work. But I do think that he becomes a Mandalorian. What I'm interested in is if by the end of the season he has a helmet. That would be something of huge interest to me.
Would you guys buy it?
Oh yeah. or question, would I 3D print it? Which is, I may or may not have already 3D printed figures of Grogu with the Mandalorian helmet on.
Funny, he does all the shit, IJ, yet we never see anything. Unless it appears behind him, we're never going to get to physically touch or own anything, an original printed by Ryan George.
It was only like 5 years ago I asked for something, I mean, it's only been a little while since I asked for something, so it's fine.
I remember saying something like, hey, a 3D printed logo of the Cynic Radio podcast would be really cool, and it just...
All right. So anyway, I'll get something together for you guys. Okay. So after some resistance, Din and Grogu descend into the ruined city before he's captured by a really cool looking monster. So tell me, what are your thoughts on the weird monster cyborg thing that captures Din?
That thing is an engineering god as far as things, because I think it may have built all that together basically to capture food, which just happens to be Mandalorians. Like he's able to find the weak spots where the armor isn't connected to drug the person, and then put them on a spit and spin them around and cook them inside of their armor so they get nice and tender, and like come apart into like 3 different creatures at different levels and do different stuff. That was really cool. I think I was just looking on IMDb. I think they're calling it an Alamite, which is
the Alamites are the creatures that
they're the fang, big. But anyway, like that thing was amazing, and quite honestly, like Star Wars things always come up with new creatures and robots and combinations and cyborgs, because it just made me think of General Grievous and everything that he did. So I was really impressed with how they put this together, and it's mostly CGI, and you can't tell. Like it looks like it belongs there, and it's living. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah,
definitely ingenuitive and a formidable foe. Like Din had nothing for it. He would have been essentially cooked if Bo-Katan didn't show back up.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Bo-Katan, so Grogu escapes and uses his newly found skills to point out where on the map he needed R5 to take him. He gets to Bo-Katan. So now, why do you think Bo-Katan travels? Cynic, why do you think Bo-Katan travels with Grogu back to Mandalore? Do you think it was out of genuine concern for Din, or is maybe there a part of her that wants Darksaber and thinks, oh well, if he's dead, I can get Darksaber?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think that his stick-to-itiveness is kind of rubbed off on her a little bit. As much as she's shooing him away and telling her she's uninterested, this is the leader that they need. She wanted to lead them, but she couldn't rally the troops behind them and keep them there. But she realizes that if Din decides that he's going to lead the Mandalorian people, she wants to be there for it.
Yeah. So Bo-Katan does go. She rescues Mando with Darksaber, which it's interesting to see the difference between how she wields it, like it's a part of her body, and the way Din wields it, which is like it weighs 1,000 pounds and he can barely. He's clumsy and it looks bad. Like, did part of you think that after she wielded it that she would just claim it for herself? Ig?
No, because she is, as much as she's not talking about doing the creed and things like that, like she still has a belief in how things have to be done with the Darksaber in regards to that. So I think that the Darksaber obviously belongs to her, but she has to get it back in the proper way and the Mandalorians have to see her get it back in the proper way for them to believe that she has it properly.
Yeah,
So-
but didn't during the episode we get our workaround, because that machine defeated Din and she defeated the machine. I mean, Darksaber.
Yeah.
Yeah, but nobody saw it. That's what I was saying. It's like somebody has to see it happen so that like she's lawfully possessing it.
So you cut the thing's head off and you bring that back. I mean, he brought a tube of water back and that was good enough.
Grogu saw it.
Yeah, but he goes,
And I wonder if she says to Din, look, he defeated you, I defeated him, it's mine now. Are you cool with that? I have a hard time thinking that he would really fight her over it.
Well, he
know, I feel
does owe her his life not once but twice in this episode.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, so Din steps into the living waters and immediately sinks. Once again, Bo-Katan saves him a second time, saves his life again. And on the way up, we see something really cool, which is the Mythosaur. Cynic, do you think that the Mythosaur plays into the show, or was it just a really cool Easter egg that we get and we're not going to deal with later on?
I think people will be disappointed if we don't revisit that. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to have a payoff later. We will see someone ride a Mythosaur before the season is out, and it's probably going to be Bo-Katan. I mean, I think we don't need Din to be the leader of the Mandalorians. As much as he's, right for the job and people would rally behind him, we need him to be the lone wolf flying around as a starfighter, getting into a random adventure, sort of like D&D. We don't need him sitting on a throne somewhere running a planet or rebuilding a planet. So I believe we see her ride it before the season's out.
But do you think he's right for the job, like, of leader of Mandalorians? Like he doesn't have, to me, doesn't seem like a leader. He's a great fighter. He's a good warrior. He's pretty creative. He's clearly a great parent and has empathy more than I think he would want people to believe. But is he really like a leader of men? Do you think can you see him leading Mandalorians?
IG.
I think I can see him leading as much as anybody else there. I think, honestly, maybe somehow Grogu is going to become the leader. And he's going to ride the Mythosaur because, like, after seeing Grogu with the Rancor in Book of Boba Fett and how he was able to basically settle the Rancor down, that I think that he among anyone probably has the greatest chance of getting on the back of a Mythosaur.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I keep seeing what's the other guy's name? Paz Vizsla, right? He's there, and like he wants to lead badly.
Yeah.
And honestly, between him leading and Din Djarin, I think Din Djarin's by far probably going to be a better leader for the covert than Paz Vizsla, because Paz Vizsla is just like very power hungry, right? He's stuck in some old ways and like there is no movement regardless of what you do. And I think Din understands that, like, sometimes things have to change. You have to adjust. Like, he's taken off his helmet a couple of times to make sure that things can happen. Like, even when he did it in the Imperial Outpost, like, if he hadn't taken it off, that mission fails.
So before we get into episode 3, prior to this season, we've talked about this, and I've said that I think, as much as I love Grogu and I think he's the cutest character, we need more character development for him. He needs some more agency as a character. Otherwise, this just becomes the same thing. It's like Grogu is kind of, he's kind of like this. He's just kind of there, and he's cute, but he has no real agency. So let's say if you include episode 1 and 2 in this, if you guys want to. Cynic, do you think that there's a difference this season as far as how his character is handled?
Slight, not much. I mean, it seems like he's doing more, so he's slightly less of a baby Yoda and more of a toddler Yoda. He's showing. I mean, even his kind of trek out of that cave, he force pushed the hell out of the alien and kind of got past him. So I think he understands more than we realize. So I think there's a little bit of movement, and I think it'll progress, but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. Like, if we keep him non-talking and cooing, it's adorable, but it doesn't do a lot for the story.
What are your thoughts, Ig?
I think, maybe he just needs to find another way to communicate, because, like, obviously he was able to communicate with Ahsoka. If he can find some way to do those things with other people, because there's plenty of things that don't speak basic or English or whatever language you're watching the show in. and like Jawas and R2 units and things like that, they beep and make noises and people talk back to them like they understood what the beeps or whirs or whatever we're making. So I think if Grogu finds a way to use his force to communicate thoughts into people so that either he can manipulate them like the weaker ones to follow his way, or just to make sure that they know what the intention is, that might be a way to do it. Because I think, giving him a voice, there's a part of us that would all be upset if he didn't talk more like Yoda, where the words were kind of jumbled in weird orders, and there'd be a part of us that'd be mad if they did do that, because nobody around him has ever done it. So there's a really weird place to try and get him to start talking.
Yeah.
If he starts going the way this is, like that might be some odd stuff. I mean, a lot of people will be like, yay, he talks like Yoda. And other people would be like, why does he talk like Yoda?
So that's interesting. I've actually, my thought is actually, I'm really happy with how they've presented him so far, and I think it's definitely progressing from the first two seasons. And it's interesting that you guys are looking at the communication, because I wasn't even thinking much about the communication, but more how he's kind of framed in scenes and the agency he has. Like if you watch, like a lot of things, he's doing actions. Like he jumped into Pelly's arms, right? She didn't reach in and grab him. He snuck around when Din was captured and then was able to get out. Even the way he controls his floaty baby carriage thing. I forget if there's an actual name for it, but that he's controlling that. I've actually found that they're giving him actions. And so for me as a viewer, it's like, oh, these are things he wasn't doing. So I'm actually thinking he is more of a character. Like I think they've done a good job, because I think him speaking, obviously he has to communicate. And I feel like his first words will happen this season, but he's not going to be speaking full sentences. And so the communication is the English, or basic communication barriers there. But I think they're doing a lot with him as a character on the screen and in the frame that's allowing him to have more agency. So I actually do like what they've done so far with him. There's very happy so far.
There's definitely been movement. I agree with it. I just don't know if it's enough. I don't know if it's I want to see him be an equal part of the story.
Yeah. Well, he is, because I feel like the story has always been about him. He's just not been in control of it, And so I think that having him be more in control of his story, I think, is the important thing. So I think we'll see. Yeah, I guess we will see how things go. It could be that he's just there, or maybe he really does play a big role in and have important choices, because he did. I mean, in Boba Fett, for what it's worth, he did have a choice. He chose to go back to Din. All right, so let's jump into episode 3, which is called The Convert. Which much like my take on The Mandalorian, there are two potential people who could be the convert in this episode. But it begins immediately after where episode 2 ends, where they're by the living waters, and Bo-Katan decides not to tell Din about seeing the mythosaur. Ig, why do you think that is?
Well, one, maybe he wouldn't believe her. That's like a weird thing, right? Like nobody's seen one. Like nobody alive has ever seen one, and it's a mythological creature. Maybe that's why they call it a mythosaur, because it's a myth. But maybe also if you tell him, he tells somebody else, and then the covert is moving back to Mandalore to try and mount the mythosaur, right? Try and capture it and show Mandalorian strength by the mythosaur is re-arisen, and here we are. Look, we've got this now. And that takes away any opportunity she has, because I think she wants to lead too, but for different reasons than like Paz Vizsla or something else. I think she just wants to see the Mandalorians rise again to a source of power in the universe, which why wouldn't you? Like, what they're capable of, and we've seen Bo in both like Rebels and Clone Wars and now this show. She's a very formidable fighter, and she's a good leader when she's able to lead. But Mandalorians are weird about how somebody's able to lead. So yeah. I think it's a little bit selfish and making sure that like something isn't used at the wrong way.
Do you have a similar take, Cynic?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's the same thing. Why would you tell him? He's crazy enough to come back to these living waters. If he gets it in his head that he has to ride the mythosaur, then you're saving him from that too. Like, I would hold on. She rightfully kept that in her pocket. And I think, like I said earlier, I think it's going to come back into play later, and I think it's going to be to her benefit, and hopefully it'll be with the Darksaber, because I'm kind of tired of the storyline. Just give it back to her. You obviously, he has other weapons that he uses much better than that, and it's cool that he has a lightsaber, but at the same time, I really think it's unnecessary.
Yeah. So they head back, and on the way back, they're met by TIE interceptors, and we get a really great battle sequence. Cynic, how good have the visuals been so far this season?
They really have. I mean, but this show has done that from the start. I sent you guys a video about how they do the scenery, which is really cool. It's almost like a living background where they can switch it and change it. Yeah. And I mean, we never see a Star Wars property where we're like, the CGI was subpar. Like it always works. It always looks good. It always looks real. This show has a way of making those backgrounds just feel completely lifelike, and it's the same with the action scenes. The battles, especially in the air, all look very, very sharp and very realistic.
Yeah. Well, there's never been there's never been a series or show that the CGI necessarily looks bad, but I think it can be overdone at times. And I think the beauty of this show is it's not overdone. And there are times where I'm not sure if something's CGI or not. I think there is a lot of practical involved while they're still shooting a lot in the volume. But yeah, this show looks great. I mean, that's one thing. It's always looked good, but this season's like taking it up a notch. So the meat of the show is on Coruscant and is focused on Dr. Pershing, who is in a reintegration program and is basically being assimilated back into the New Republic. We meet him, we meet some other ex-Imperials. So this show it's the first episode of the entire series that drifts away from the Mandalorian and or Grogu. Ig, what are your thoughts on doing that? Does that work for this show?
I know there's a lot of complaints about it online. I've seen people calling it like the worst episode of The Mandalorian so far. But knowing what Jon Favreau is doing basically with all this stuff, along with Dave Filoni, like this isn't here for no reason. There's a reason this stuff is here, right? We have a burgeoning New Republic. We have things happening, and obviously there's remnants and people that were part of the Empire that are all over the place now, whether you were just a file clerk or you were communications officer or whatever you were doing with the Empire. Like, you can't just take this universe full of people where the Empire was running everything and like a lot of people were doing it and just put all of them in prison. Like, that just doesn't work. So you have to do something. Now, I think they're setting up some other things. Like, I don't think Pershing died, but I think maybe he's going to think that like the New Republic did this to me, put me in a brain scrambler and did all this to me, even though it was a former Imperial, right? So this is going to like change some things in how the story goes. And I think it's going to be important. They wouldn't have put an hour-long basically episode in right in the midst of this season without there being some reason. So I think sometimes when you look at an episode by itself and don't think about what else it's going to impact, it might look bad. But if you don't have that stuff and later in the season, like Pershing is like getting very successful in cloning something, and maybe we see like Snoke being made or something that's holding the essence of the Emperor or something like that really becomes important in Star Wars lore. Without this episode, it would be really difficult. So I think it was important, and I think people are just getting a little too rushed. And it was really well acted. It was really beautiful to look at, and Coruscant and everything again. I like anytime we get better looks at Coruscant because we always get real limited little things, right? And seeing some other things is always really interesting.
Yeah. Well, there was a joke that this was kind of like the Mandalorian because it was kind of similar to Andor in that it's like it's world building a lot more than we're used to. And just in the tone, it felt a little bit more like an episode of Andor, which is, it seems like a pattern now. Like we're going, Boba Fett had a couple episodes of The Mandalorian. Mandalorian has an episode that feels like Andor. But I agree. I think that the world building is good for this show, and I think we need that for this character. And I'm okay with like an episode where we're not focused on them. If it's just I want a good show, and I do think this episode was strong. We'll get a little more into it when we get to the final reviews. But so Pershing befriends Elia Kane, who was on Gideon's ship. We saw her a couple times last season, and right away it appears as if she has ulterior motives, as she convinces him to work or convinces him to get back to his work, albeit for what he thinks are altruistic means. What were your Cynic? What are your thoughts initially on their connection? Did you feel like it was romantic? Did you feel like she was like an Imperial spy? What were your thoughts initially with it?
The only thing I thought differently of than worked out in the story was I thought that she was there to reacquire him as an asset. Yeah. Other than that, I didn't buy her friendship. I didn't buy. Not only was this the worst episode of The Mandalorian, it was the worst episode of Andor. Like it just. None of it worked for me. Wow. Maybe if we hadn't seen Andor, these shows need to learn to bounce back and forth. If we're going to do an Andor episode, let's include Din Djarin a little bit, like Game of Thrones used to. They would split up the story, so at least if some of it's not working, you're not stuck with a whole episode of it, because it didn't work. I love the idea of, okay, this is what we did with the Imperials after the war. Some of them do get to be reformed and rejoin society. But also, part of the reason why I didn't like the episode is it's paying more lip service to the Rey trilogy, which I'm not a huge fan of, because without Pershing around now, the clone of the Emperor doesn't become fully what he should be, and that's why he goes looking for Rey, and that's kind of why Snoke was leading de facto so he could hide in the background. I mean, I was hoping that we would just retcon that whole trilogy and move on from there, and just start launching the next set of movies through The Mandalorian and other shows like that. I just wasn't a big fan of this episode at all.
You're never going to get Ryan to agree to that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But all right, well, anyway, it turns out she was working for the Republic, which is a nice little switch. Like I knew
but she wasn't.
I knew she. Well, yeah, but I knew she had ulterior motives. But I didn't think she was working for the Republic. Obviously, I think we all know that she's still an Imperial asset. But it was a nice little switch. So based on that, and the very end, Pershing is in the Mind Flayer or whatever it is, and when she turns up the pain a little bit on him. What are your takes on that? Is that clearly like she's an Imperial agent and she's trying to screw with him so that he jumps ship eventually?
I think that's exactly what she's doing. Like she knows that he is singular in his ability, right? There's nobody else, because I don't think the Kaminoans, like something happened to them. So he's singular in his ability, and if she can turn him against the Republic, even as a shadow agent kind of thing, she can get him to do things, because he knows that, she double-crossed him. But if she's like, I was just trying to keep you safe, and I was just trying to do this, and like they tried to fry your brain, I had to come in and stop them. She's playing him, right? She's a shadow agent. She's doing her thing. So without him, then the sequel trilogy isn't going to happen. So we know that like Pershing is the guy. He's the one that's going to make it all work. So I kind of like where it's going. Again, I'm probably with Cynic that I'm not the biggest fan of the sequel trilogy. Like I'm still an original trilogy guy, but there's things I like in the sequel trilogy. I mean, so I just think that they could have done things differently. But we all have hopes and desires, and I'm not George Lucas or Lucasfilm, so me making my decisions about what I thought was better makes no difference.
So the show episode ends back. We get back to Mando, Bo-Katan, and Grogu. They arrive at the covert, and basically they're taken back in. He proves that he bathed in living waters, and so did Bo-Katan. So she seemingly accepts to be part of the group for the time being. Cynic, what's her play? Do you think she just is accepting it? Do you think she's playing the long game? What's her play at this point?
Well, I would think that there's some shadow ulterior motive if we didn't watch her house get blown to hell the scene before. Essentially, she's homeless at this point. So, yeah, you're going to go stay with the in-laws whether you like them or not. And IG, I just don't agree with you on Pershing. I think his mind is now sweet potatoes. They basically made the decision, and that if the Empire can't have you, we're definitely not going to let you work for the Republic. We're not looking at a Republic clone army anytime soon. They fried his brain as almost a way to get back at him for converting.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think they think they're doing the right thing. And I think I feel like they realize it's a long process, and obviously it has some parallels to like conversion therapy, and that it's probably not the right way to go about things. But I don't think that they're going to try to make his brain mush. I think they're really trying to
Oh no, she made his brain mush. She did she did like the manager, Queen's manager at Live Aid.
The question is this:
she turned the sound all the way up.
But if she's an Imperial agent, why would she make his brain mush? She needs his brain intact.
Because I don't think they can require him at this point. So I think I'm going to drop the piece of information that I was going to use in my closing. I think Thrawn decided that if the Empire can't have him, the Republic's not going to have him either.
I don't know. I feel like this episode shouldn't happen if that's the case, but maybe we'll see. We'll find out by the end of the season. So Ig, as our resident Star Wars expert, there was a lot of fan service. Give me your favorite fan servicey moment of this episode.
Ooh,
there was a lot.
There was a lot. I think just the real subtle wrapping on the biscuits, right, that had the little Imperial logo and everything. It was just a little thing to me that was like, the attention to detail. When you do the rations, I like the yellow biscuits with, and they're all like in a nice box with a little wrapper, has a little Imperial logo on it. And as small as that was, that to me just was like, I want some yellow biscuits with an Imperial wrapper. I don't know why, but that to me, I mean, I liked seeing the Star Destroyer there being decommissioned. I liked seeing as they moved around. I liked, basically the Arbesh on the little ship as it came down that said police on it when they were arresting him again. All of that stuff was cool, but the wrapper for me, I don't know why. That was just a cool moment.
Seneca, do you have a favorite fan service moment?
Oh, I mean, between the two episodes, definitely going to Mandalore was cool. The Mythosaur was very cool. I mean, to see where the Mandalorians are at, that living in a cave and kind of sort of destitute, if you really think about it, because you. Well, looks like we lost Ryan. At least I don't know what happened there. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's never happened before, oddly. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff really kind of saved the episode for me.
Well, there was the big one, which was the "it's a trap" moment, which was fun, saying that's Mon Calamari. And my favorite was so I didn't like the Rise of Skywalker, but I did like Force Awakens, and much to your guys' chagrin, I like for the Last Jedi. And there was
we don't hold it against you, Ryan. As much it's okay.
And I think, what is it, the Rise of the Resistance, whatever, that song that they played, like a remixed version of that when he and Kane were walking eating the glowy ice cream, which I liked. That was a nice little subtle thing that I did like. I mean, whatever you thought about the series, the music, obviously it's John Williams, but I think he did a great job with the score for those movies. All right, Cynic, your favorite, your cutest Grogu moment. Review for both episodes and your scores for both episodes.
Cutest Grogu still had to be like, him jumping into Pelimoto's arms. Mm-hmm. Like, that was just, you can tell that like she's treated him well, and he understands that like she's not going to do anything to hurt him. And just like his excitement at seeing her is just like, coming home from a long vacation like I just did. And the dog's getting all like, just, you're home. Oh my God. I thought you were gone forever. It just was really cute. I liked both episodes. Episode 2 better than episode 3, but I think episode 3 I will like later when they build on to why they did it. But for right now, I guess of the two, episode 2 is my favorite. Seeing all that stuff.
Yeah, just problems tonight. Yeah. There we go. We got a second egg.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I put you back in.
Well, I don't see myself on the screen, and that's fine.
We see two of you, unfortunately.
Yeah, we see two of you.
That's too many. That's one too many. Probably two too many. But anyway, like finally seeing an actual mythosaur like on the screen like was an amazing thing. So episode 2, I'm probably going to give a 9. I really enjoyed it. A lot of good movement and stuff. Episode 3, I'm a little split because like the stuff with the TIE fighters and the TIE bombers and stuff like that, like it was really cool. It was a little bit slow in the Andor type stuff when they were on Coruscant, but I think it was important stuff. I'm probably going to give episode 3, the convert, a 7.5. I enjoyed it, but I think that it's just more important in the overall story.
All right. Cynic, do you want me to go first, or you?
Yeah,
want...
go ahead.
Okay.
That way I can wrap up.
Yeah, sure. So okay, so we're all over the place, I think, with these episodes. I think the cutest Grogu moment had to be him saying, "This is the way," or trying to say it, and then the kind of reaction by Din. So I think that'll probably be his first words, just because it's like a call and response type thing. You hear someone say, "This is the way," someone, you say, "This is the way." So I feel like that'll be his first words. But I thought that was the cutest Grogu moment. But there's a bunch. So episode 2, I did not like all that much. I think it looked. The show looks great. It looks cinematic, and especially those the battle scene in the beginning looks really good. I actually liked it. The end of the show also had a kind of an emotional moment when they're being accepted. I think that actually worked well. But it was really dark, and it was kind of like, okay, we're gonna go here and then leave here and then go here, and it was a lot of walking around and like, I like the stuff with Grogu as far as him having some more agency, but it kind of, I don't know, it just dragged for me, and it just was a little underwhelming to me. So I didn't love that episode. It was great to get a mythosaur, but I would give episode 2 really like a 7.5. So not bad, but it wasn't up to the standard of previous seasons, especially having just rewatched the first 2 seasons. Episode 3, actually, I liked it. I liked episode 3 a lot. I actually thought it's the best episode of the season. And my mistake, the fighting scenes were in this episode, not in the previous episode. But that was real. I thought, again, looked really good. I love the stuff on Coruscant. The world building, I like the world building in this show. And I agree, like, we want to see, Din and Grogu. That's our show. But I'm hopeful that there's a reason why this was placed. I still think that if the 2 episodes that we got in Boba Fett were here, we would not have an issue with this, because this would be, episode, at this point it'd be episode 5 in the middle of the season. We'd be okay with it. But the fact that we didn't, I still think was a major error that they made with the show. But I still think this is a really good episode. Again, really good world building, good character work. And so I'm going to give this episode an 8.5.
Okay, fair enough. Mine's a Mandalore. I'm going to go ahead and give an 8. I enjoyed it. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of Mandalore, but it did enough for me. It was kind of the old school D&D dungeon crawl, and I like that. And I like the really ingenious villain that they had that captured Mando. I love the fact that the Bo-Katan Din Djarin partnership is kind of taken state and progressing, and I kind of enjoyed the fact that he needed to be saved for once, and that she did it not only once but twice. I agree with Ryan in the sense that they are doing a lot more with Grogu. Maybe it's not going as fast as I want it to, but it is happening. And my favorite moment with him is whenever he closes his kind of like the blast shield on his floating little carriage. Whenever there's danger, I don't know why it makes me laugh every time he does it. It's like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to float away. So, I mean, Mind of Mandalore was a decent episode. I enjoyed it a lot more than the Convert, only for the reasons that I gave. I do love seeing Coruscant. I love all, the decommissioned Star Destroyer, like Aid said. I thought that was all very cool. As good of an actress as Katie M. O'Brien is, Elia Kane, she wasn't doing it for me in this episode. I loved her when she was part of Moff Gideon's crew, but in this particular role, I wasn't buying it. I didn't buy that she was there for anything but alternative motives, and that's what it turned out to be the case. I didn't enjoy the episode. Like I said, this is just cementing that trilogy that I just do not enjoy in any way whatsoever. So, I mean, there's that. So I'm going to go ahead and give the Convert a 6. Yeah, it just didn't do it for me. They need to learn, if they're going to do stuff like this, to Game of Thrones it up and bounce back and forth between the 2 storylines and maintain balance that way. That way I have something to look forward to, not just, I can't wait till this episode's over. And I've never done that with this show. This is the first time. It's like, please just let this end. Because I know they're either going to kidnap or kill this guy, and that's the way it ended up happening. They fried him and, end of story. So, I mean, that's episode 174 of the Cynic Radio podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always reach us at cynicradio@gmail.com, and we are on all the socials at Cynic Radio. So, until next time, IG.
Don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cynicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.